Yeah, if that's what you want. Augusto, or are you starting it?
Please go ahead.
Okay, awesome. Okay, well, thank you for coming. For you guys that could make it, that's excellent. Just so you know that the meeting is going to be recorded as well, so we can post it later and let other people see it. So just a bit of background on this project. This was an idea that was put forward with the Parks and Rec Commission and along with our recreation staff. And it's a bit of a big idea document. It was provided by a provincial grant, is what gave us the funds to hire a consultant to take a look at West Bench. And the idea behind it is, if we want to value aging at home, how can we take the information in this document and apply it to what we actually can do in West Bench? So when we're thinking about sidewalks or benches and parks and recreation, how can we best make sure that we're enabling everybody at all ages to enjoy everything West Bench has to offer? So some of the document we can't do. We're just restricted by zoning, finances for a lot of it, but a lot of it we can do. So I wanted just to hand it back over to Augusto to introduce the consultants and as our staff person. And thanks so much for coming.
Thank you, Director Gens, and that's an absolute accurate introduction to this document. It helps provide us some guidance, but again, this is in its current draft form, so there are some adjustments that we'll continue to make with further discussions with folks here and with the feedback we're getting through regional connections as well. And so my name is Augusto Romero, and I'm the Regional Recreation Manager who's been project managing this piece of work, and we've partnered in with Urban Systems, and Brittany Tuttle from Urban Systems has been leading in on the side of Urban Systems in terms of getting this work done. Also with me is Sydney, and Sydney is our new recreation coordinator for the West Bench, so I'm sure some folks haven't got a chance to meet her, but you'll hopefully see her throughout the next little while here in the community anyways, as long as we can continue to provide programming into the West Bench. So just a quick introduction, and on that note, I'll pass it back to Brittany for the more formal presentation piece.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. So before we get started, just a couple of things to note. If you're not familiar with Zoom, I'm just going to go over a few quick sort of Zoom rules per se. So for the first half hour, 20 minutes to half hour, we'll be doing a presentation, and then after that you'll have an opportunity to ask questions and provide some feedback on anything that was discussed during the presentation. So while the presentation component is happening, we just ask that you please keep your microphone muted and hold any questions until the question component. And then at that point in time, you're more than free to raise your hand when you wish to speak. In order to raise your hand, if you're unfamiliar with how to do that, you'll see a participant button along the bottom of your screen. If you click that, a new window will open up, and then there will be some options in the participant window that say things like yes, no, and then there's a raise your hand button. So you can click on that, and that will signal to us that you would like to speak. So any other things, feel free to use the chat if you would like to ask a question through the chat. We'll be keeping an eye on that as well. And I think that's it in terms of just general Zoom rules. So we will just jump right in. Okay, so quick agenda here for you to let you know what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to go over the project. So just kind of expanding on what Director Gettens has already outlined, why we're doing this project and why we're here today talking to you. Going to describe to you what age-friendly planning is. So this is a rather new emerging topic in the community planning world that not all of us are familiar with. So we'll provide you with some context on that. We'll just discuss the West Bench neighborhood and some demographic statistics, and then we'll dive into some of the highlights of the plan. And then we'll talk to you about the next steps for this project moving forward, and then we will have an opportunity for questions in the latter half of the presentation. Okay, so project context. So this project was sparked by the fact that there are a lot of seniors in the West Bench community. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about the specifics of that when we get to the neighborhood context slide. But one of the primary purposes for undertaking this age-friendly process for the Greater West Bench was the large proportion of seniors that make up the community's population. We know that the Greater West Bench is a really desirable place to live. It's beautiful. It's close to Penticton. There's opportunity to own a bit of a larger lot with a single family home. And you can still be close to lots of great services that are offered right next door in Penticton. And that was one of the key things that we heard when we were doing engagement back in the fall, is that people choose to live here because of its rural character. And then also the fact that there's a school makes it appealing for some families as well. So with that being said, as more people continue to see the appeal of living in this community, the community will continue to grow moving forward. And that, of course, can potentially diversify the population and the demographic sort of breakdown of the community. So we want to make sure that West Bench is a place where people can live. They can live there their entire life without ever having to worry about not being able to access the services and amenities that they need to live there. So we don't want people to feel or think that they need to move because they're not getting the access to the services and amenities that they need to have a really solid, high quality of life. So by undertaking this age-friendly process, we were able to sort of explore what that might look like for the West Bench community and what we need to do in the future to improve. And so, as Director Gens and Augusto mentioned, this project was funded by a provincial grant that we received, and that's called the Age Friendly Communities Grant. Okay, so project timeline. So we kicked this off in July. We just had a general startup to meet with staff and get some more context on what's happening in the community. And then in the latter half of the summer, we did some community engagement and into the fall. So there was a group that was formed called the Age Friendly Champions. And this was a group of 5 community members who we met with to discuss the project and its objectives. And so we met with them sometime in late July, I believe, to kind of discuss the project. And they provided us with some direction on a survey that was distributed in mid-August through to mid-September. And so we received 47 responses back from the community on that survey. We presented the findings of this survey to the West Bench Parks and Recreation Commission, as well as the Age Friendly Champions. And when we took the findings of the survey to those groups, we were asking them some key questions to kind of better understand some of the results that came through in the survey and dive a little bit deeper on some of those responses. In late October, we started the assessment component of this plan, and we did a visit to the neighborhood to look at some gaps and barriers that may pose challenges for how an individual may undergo daily activities in the community and to identify opportunities for improvement. So this was largely assessing the existing infrastructure. So looking at the existing sort of parks, the outdoor spaces, the school, the outside of the school, not the inside of the school, the roads, the multi-use pathways, all of those things. And then we compiled this into an assessment that we circulated to Interior Health and BC Healthy Communities for their review and comment. And then based on that assessment and the engagement findings, we compiled all of that information into the draft plan that we have now circulated to you, to the community, and to other stakeholders for review, which is posted on the RDOS's Regional Connections website. And we have a link to that provided at the presentation if you're not sure how to access that. And so now moving forward, we are seeking public input on the draft plan to make sure that we addressed everything, we didn't miss anything. And then we'll finalize the plan after we've reviewed all of your feedback and make any edits as necessary. And then it will be ready to go in the coming weeks here in early March. So
Hi, it's Miriam here. I've joined you.
Oh, hi, Miriam.
Hi. This is my first time on Zoom, so I do apologize.
No problem. So you may have just missed the beginning, Miriam, but we just mentioned that if you can hold any sort of questions or comments that you have until we get to the latter half of the presentation, then that would be awesome.
Good. I could hear you and I could see the postings, but you couldn't hear me. So I figured out which buttons to press and I'm with you.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
We'll talk to you soon then.
Very good.
We're gonna keep going on.
Excellent.
Okay. So what is age-friendly planning? This is a concept that was created by the World Health Organization, the WHO. We're all very familiar with them right now because of the pandemic. So age-friendly planning is a concept that ensures that communities have all of the necessary infrastructure, amenities, and services in place to allow an individual to live the duration of their life within that particular community. And so the ultimate goal is to make sure that every person who lives in the community is experiencing the same level of a high quality of life, regardless of what their age or abilities may be. And so there are 8 pillars that support this concept of age-friendly planning. And these are the pillars here in this lovely, colorful flower. So there's outdoor spaces and buildings, which looks at all of the public infrastructure and buildings, so like parks, any sort of recreation facilities, if there is one, community halls, etc., to make sure that those are in good condition and they're designed in a manner that incorporates accessibility features. Transportation, so that's making sure that there's a range of options that are provided that are accessible and affordable to all people who live in the community to make sure they can get around. Housing is looking at the types of housing that are provided and making sure that there are no sort of barriers that the housing forms are created. So we want to make sure that they're affordable and that people are not experiencing any housing challenges. Community supports and health services focus on providing quality, accessible healthcare and community support services, making sure it's easily available to all of the residents. Communication information just looks at making sure that information is being distributed through a variety of mediums and that it's easily accessible to all individuals. Respect and social inclusion ensures that there are sufficient outreach opportunities so that no one is feeling isolated by any means. Social participation looks at the number of community events, festivals, recreation programs for residents, so opportunities for them to socialize with each other and be involved in the community. And then there's civic participation and employment. And so this looks at opportunities for individuals to volunteer with community organizations or to take on some sort of employment in their community. So when we undertake an age-friendly planning process, we look at all 8 of these pillars to make sure that everything that the community needs to adequately address all of these pillars is in place, because they all do impact the overall quality of life. Okay, so some facts about your community, and since you're the residents, I'm sure you know some of these things already, and it's not really a huge surprise to you. But something to note here is that these statistics I'm showing you are based on the 2016 census data for electoral area F, because the census does not collect data for the greater West Bench community specifically. But we can assume that because the community is one of the more populous areas of Area F, that the statistics are quite representative of what's happening in Greater West Bench. So as you'll see here, a large majority of the houses in the community are single detached homes. That makes a lot of sense considering that the lots are a little bit larger in size. Most people who live in the community own their own home, which is also likely attributed to the housing stock being predominantly single detached, since most forms of rental housing are usually apartments, duplexes, etc. The average household size in West Bench is 2.7 persons per household. And this is kind of interesting actually, because as we move on to the next slide, I'll show you, you'll see that the largest demographic in the community is those aged 55 and over. So this is interesting because this is telling us that, you know, maybe senior citizens are residing with younger family members or perhaps caretakers. So as you can see here, 43% of the population of the community is age 55 or over, with the largest demographic group being between the age 55 and 64. And so remember that these stats were collected 5 years ago now. So if we were to look at this data today, we would likely see a higher percentage in the 64 to 74 age group than what it is currently. And then also in the age 55 to 64 category, because of the high percentage of 45 to 54-year-olds that are shown in these stats. So this is really key for the community moving forward to recognize that the percentage of the population that is in the senior category is going to keep increasing most likely. Okay, so plan components. So I sort of touched on some of this when I was talking about the project timeline. But the first sort of component of the plan is the assessment. And so that identifies where the community is currently in terms of providing all the things that it needs, infrastructure, amenities, that it needs to be age friendly. And it outlines any sort of gaps and barriers associated with those things. The action plan provides recommendations for how we can address those gaps and barriers moving forward and to make the community more age friendly. And then the implementation plan lists how the regional district can work.
I'm sorry, Brittany. I have to go. I'm having a problem with my smoke detectors,
Okay.
and an electrician here is here right now.
Oh no. Okay.
I'll come back and join you if I can.
Okay. Good luck, Miriam.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining.
Okay.
Bye. So as I was saying, then there's also the implementation plan. And so the implementation plan outlines how the regional district, the RDOS, and any other stakeholders, so the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, for example, Interior Health, etc., can all work together to implement some of those recommendations that are outlined in the plan. Okay, so we have a vision statement for the document, and this is a very broad statement. And the purpose of the vision statement is to provide direction for the plan as a whole. So its focus is on ensuring that West Bench is an age-friendly community for all. So the vision is Greater West Bench is a multi-generational community where people of all ages can adequately live the duration of their life without facing challenges that may require them to relocate outside of the community. Okay, so there are 5 key areas that are the focus of the plan, and these are largely based on the age-friendly pillars. So, for example, if you haven't had a chance to take a look at the plan yet, in the assessment section, the existing assets for outdoor spaces and buildings are identified, as well as any gaps and barriers associated with those. And that's the case with all of the other 4 areas that are identified on this slide. Then the action plan outlines recommendations associated with each of these key areas, and then the implementation plan as well. So you'll notice, though, that I mentioned closer to the beginning of the presentation that there are 8 pillars associated with age-friendly planning, and we only have 5 of those sort of 8 pillars listed here. And that's because we've sort of merged the pillars of social participation, communication and information, respect and social inclusion, and civic participation into one because there were so many overlaps between these things. So it just made sense to put them all together into one category. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk to you about some of the key findings when we were assessing each of the pillars, what the existing assets are in the community, the barriers, and then some of the recommendations, what the focus of the recommendations are in the plan moving forward to address each of these key areas. So we'll start with outdoor spaces and buildings. So the community, the assets are the community has 3 parks, and then there's also the school, which even though it's not owned by the RDOS, it is a really strong community hub for the school, and that really came through in the engagement, just how important the school is to the community. There are also some washrooms at Mariposa and Selby Park, and accessibility features at the school and Selby Park, which we can classify as assets as well. The climate of the community is an asset too, because it allows people to be a little bit more active, even in the colder months, compared to other places where it's like -30 and you don't want to go outside at all in the winter time. And then in terms of some gaps and barriers, is that, as I mentioned, there is no formal gathering space in the community or a formal recreational space. The RDOS makes use of the school to provide recreational programming, but there's no service agreement that allows for extended use of this facility like there is for Naramata, for example. It was identified in the survey that the wheelchair accessibility in some places in the community is not so great. And it was also identified that there aren't a lot of public washrooms. So if you're out for a stroll, you gotta book it back home if you have to go. And so that's not always ideal. So our focus in the plan in terms of recommendations was on how can we improve the accessibility of the existing public spaces that we have. And so an example of one of the recommendations was that we'll look at exploring some feasible locations for a public washroom in the community. And another example was that we will consider providing a walking path at Mariposa Park or perhaps the school. Okay, so moving forward to transportation. So in terms of assets, you have a really lovely multimodal path that runs along West Bench Hill Road and connects to the highway. The community is also very close to Penticton, so most things that may be needed in terms of services are not too far away in terms of driving by car to get there. The multimodal path, as lovely as it is not ideal for everybody because it is very hilly, so that can pose some challenges. And it's unlikely that people are really using this as a way to commute down to Penticton. It's more used for recreational purposes. The primary way of getting around the West Bench is the automobile. And so not everyone may be able to drive, or not everyone may have access to a car. So that poses to be a really big challenge. And even though there is no transit currently, it is planned to start servicing the West Bench in September. So hopefully that will help with some of the challenges that are faced right now in terms of transportation. But that's something that we'll have to monitor as we move forward. Many identified in the survey that the road conditions in the winter months are not great. And so, this isn't good because for many reasons, but I think that there's probably an extra challenge posed in the community here because your terrain is so hilly, like there's probably quite a bit of ice that gets formed on the roads. So that's an issue for people driving and for people out walking too. And something else that came up too is that there's a lot of high traffic speeds, and so it's not pleasant for people who are walking on the side of the road where there maybe is no sidewalk, or it's not the pathway along West Bench Hill Drive. So that poses a safety challenge for sure. So our recommendations moving forward was to make sure that there are accessible and affordable transportation options for everyone in the community. So some examples are providing some wider sidewalks. 1 new sidewalks are being built, and so that will act as a bit of a traffic calming measure. If there's wider sidewalks, it means the road is a bit narrower, and that causes cars to slow down. And then that will also help anyone who requires a mobility aid to have more space to walk around in the community. And then we have also recommended to monitor the new transit system that will be coming in place in the fall to make sure that it's meeting the needs of the community. So if the service isn't frequent enough, then that's something that we'll need to look at moving forward to see what exactly needs to be improved. Okay, so moving on to community support and health services. So in terms of assets, we have fitness and recreation programs that are offered at the school by the RDOS currently. And there's also the Nurse Next Door service, which provides services to the West Bench community. However, it is based out of Penticton, and that is a form of home health care. Most of the medical and commercial amenities, so like grocery stores, other sort of retail needs and whatnot, those are all accessed in Penticton, which is a gap, I would say, in the community, because if you need something, you need to run out quickly. You know, even though Penticton is close, it's still a bit further away than how close it could be if there was something in the community. And there currently is no other option for fitness and health programming aside from what is offered by the RDOS at the school. And there's no community facility to offer that either. So moving forward, our recommendations were just very generally focused on improving access to these community support and health services. So an example of a recommendation was that we would like to conduct a community engagement process to determine the types of recreational and fitness programs that the community may wish to see and how frequently they may wish to see them. So like seasonally, monthly, weekly, etc. And then another recommendation is to encourage and support the development of volunteer service programs that are focused on the health and well-being of seniors. So for example, like Meals on Wheels, volunteer medical drivers, things like that. Okay, so housing. This is an interesting one. So there are no housing assets in the West Bench. And so a housing asset in this case would be classified as like a care facility, supportive housing, or smaller forms of housing, like duplexes, apartments, etc. Things that are a bit smaller. But the West Bench doesn't have any of those. And so the gaps and barriers in the community in terms of housing is that the homes are larger and typically on larger lots. And so those pose maintenance challenges for individuals as they age and might not be able to adequately care for their home anymore. Affordability is also an issue for anyone who's maybe wishing to downsize and relocate. Also for newcomers coming into the community too, because of the larger lot and home sizes, real estate is a little bit more expensive. And then again, there are no alternate forms of housing. So if someone who's maybe lived all of their life in West Bench and then they get older and they can't care for their home anymore, they don't really have an option if they want to stay in the community, except to find someone who can help them maintain their home, or they may have to relocate. So This is a bit of a tricky one to address because the community is very rural in nature, and many community members indicated during the engagement period that this is what they really love about the community. They love that it's a little bit more rural, and they love that it's close to Penticton. So in terms of moving forward to address that, it's a bit of a challenge because there is no sewer servicing provided. So smaller forms of housing like carriage homes and secondary suites are not really an option. So recommendations moving forward are to focus more on how we can make the existing housing stock enable independence for those who are living there already. So thinking about things like what is the impact of short-term rentals on the housing stock, and encouraging residents to apply for the Home Adaptations for Independence program, which is offered through BC Housing, and that allows individuals to receive funding to modify their home so that their house can be a little bit more accessible, so have some more accessible features. Okay, and then so for the last key area here, we have the big one, social participation, civic participation in employment, communication, information, respect, and social inclusion. So in terms of assets, one thing that's really evident about your community is that you have a really strong sense of community in West Bench, which is really, really nice to see. People really seem to be supportive of each other, and they like spending time together. So as I mentioned before, the school does act as a sort of informal community hub because events are hosted there, and it seems to be a key place for bringing the community together. You also have the community Facebook page, Director Getton's blog, and then the RDOS channels such as Regional Connections and Civic Ready. And these are all used to provide information about the community and promote events, etc. And then, of course, you also have your local news websites like Castanet and local newspapers. In terms of gaps and barriers, so I mentioned before, there is no community hub, so that is a huge gap. And seems to be a recurring theme throughout this planning process. And then in terms of those who do not have, access to the internet or some other forms of technology, or maybe they aren't familiar with technological platforms, there doesn't seem to be as much information sharing or access to information for those people. So this poses to be a challenge because we need to come up with some other ways that we can share information and ensure that it's being accessed by everybody. So moving forward, we're focusing on just being able to encourage more opportunities for social health and participation, and improving access to information. So some examples of recommendations that are outlined in the plan are to provide a seasonal community newsletter that discusses events, any sort of regional district updates, and outlines some community service contacts. So provides information on contacts for things like snow clearing, lawn maintenance, grocery delivery, all of those types of things that may be helpful. And another example is assist the community in establishing a group to plan year-round all ages events to be hosted in the community. Okay, so in terms of next steps on this project, so as I mentioned at the beginning, we are in the middle of the public review period, and it will be over in mid-February, so February 15th. We have a survey open right now on the Regional Connections website, and we will provide you with a link to that at the end of the presentation. And the draft plan is posted on there right now, so you can go on the Regional Connections website, take a look at the draft plan, and you'll be able to fill out a feedback form if you have any comments on that. And then so we're going to review all the feedback, and then at the end of the month, we'll present the plan to the regional board and the Greater West Bench Parks and Recreation Committee once the plan has been finalized and all of your feedback has been considered. So this is the link for the regional connections page, and the survey, or the feedback form, sorry, closes on February 15th. So I'm going to put this up again at the end of the presentation too, if you want to jot it down, but for now we will turn it over to you. So as I mentioned before, and if you happen to join late, we are going to jump into the Q&A piece of the presentation. So if you'd like to speak, you can go into your participants window and click on the raise hand function, or feel free to type in the chat. And we're here to listen to your comments and answer your questions. Yes, Director Gettins.
Thank you for this. I have a couple of questions actually. So I was doing a newsletter for a while, and then I ended up stopping it because it ended up being much more expensive than I anticipated it being. But I hadn't thought about, and I guess the other reason too is that I felt a lot of the information that was time sensitive was also available in the newspapers and that kind of thing. But you've kind of sparked an interest in me because I didn't really think about providing information about services to support staying in West Bench longer, like grocery delivery and that kind of thing. So I want to just acknowledge that. I think that's a really neat idea. And I also was curious if you knew of any studies around transportation timing for people that want to stay in their community longer. So we're getting this bus, and it's very limited, limited routes or timing of the routes because we're not paying a whole lot, so kind of testing it. So I'm curious about what that timing for seniors. And then I also wanted to know more about the BC Housing Adaptation Plan, and is that just on the government website? Because I'm curious to read a little bit more about that as well. Thanks.
Yeah. So in terms of the transportation aspect first, I don't know of any formal plans that look at like how to best sort of coordinate with schools, or not with schools, with seniors, like what timing is good for them. We did talk with the Age Friendly Champions group about this, and something that they recommended was moving forward, if we're finding that the service that's being provided, the time isn't great, like maybe one thing that should be considered is aligning the times with school start and end, and then also with some popular class times like swimming lessons and whatnot that are being offered in Penticton, to ensure that they have an option for taking the bus to go down to those things. So it would be a matter of like looking at like what the seniors recreational programming offerings are in Penticton, and then trying to align the times with that. That's like a very technical exercise, but if it's going to increase ridership, then it could be worth it, because then you're ensuring that the service is being adequately used and paid for. So that's to answer your first question. Second question about the BC Housing Adaptation Fund. It is on their website. I can send you a link to that after if you'd like. I'll make a note of that right now.
Thank you. And then, yeah, just links, like what kind of, if there's a link you can share with me about in things, I don't know. I just know there's always services that I never think about until I hear about them. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So finding kind of a list of these kind of services, or asking your championship group to help with that would be awesome.
Yeah, and you know what, the champion group actually came up with the idea for coming up with a newsletter that outlines like contacts for services and whatnot. So we were really, really lucky that we had such great champions on this project, I must say.
Yeah, great, thank you.
No problem. Anne, I saw that you had your hand raised at one point there.
I have a couple of comments. One is, while we're on the newsletter thing really quickly, if we are looking at ways to have a registry or something for services. I know for us, one of the issues is always snow clearing because our driveway is 350 feet plus long and we're, aging. But could advertising some of those services be a way to help pay for the newsletter?
Yeah, definitely.
And then the other thing is when we keep talking about that whole issue of not having a community hub, I am aware, I think you brought up the example of Naramata having access to their school. And I think another really good example is also Okanagan Falls.
Okay.
There was a wing added onto the school by RDOS.
Oh,
And there's a commercial grade kitchen that's available there. And I think with just a few things, with all the things that we produce food wise on the West Bench, getting together for canning bees and being able to do those kinds of things would be really awesome. And while I'm thinking about that, one of the issues that can come up in terms of taking care of your property is harvesting fruit. And I don't know, Riley, if you're aware of the BC tree fruit group that they're always looking for volunteers to help coordinate picking, but they come and pick fruit. They'll leave you like a third of it. They'll take the rest and distribute it to other people in need. And I have accessed them on occasion. One of the fruits that's very common on the West Bench are cherries, and they can be a little labor intensive to pick. So I've used that group several times when I've sort of been in a bind trying to get my fruit off. So anyways, those are just some comments, but getting back to the whole thing of, does it look like there's any movement on us being able to get any better access to the school as a community hub?
Yeah, thanks, Anne, because you and I share a passion for this for sure. You know what, honestly, COVID sidetracked the SD 67. So there was good conversation, positive conversation for sure. Of course, and we still have to go up to the community and everything like that. And I actually just asked for an update. I'm going to say maybe Monday, but it could have been last week. But yeah, I think the school district just got so busy sidetracked with COVID that that's definitely on the table. And I really love that idea of having a community hub and then having, I didn't even think about the commercial kitchen, but you're right. There's so much. I love the idea of having the community kind of all brainstorm together and come up with some cool ideas. So no, I haven't let that one go.
Okay. And I'm going to have to run in a few minutes. But thank you for having this little session, and I will look and see if there's anything left on the.
Oh, we lost her.
She's gone. Sue, you have your hand up there.
Yeah, this is my first time on Zoom, so can you hear me?
Can hear you just fine. Yep.
Oh,
perfect. So good. This is fantastic. You can do this with all your grandbabies now, Sue.
And I'm doing it on my cell phone. I'm not even on the computer. So woot, point for me. Anyways, just to touch briefly, and as you, Riley and Anne have just touched on, I think huge for us on the West Bench is working with School District 67 to somehow get a shared use agreement. It's the only gathering spot we have for town hall meetings or whatever is going on. But also the grounds themselves are well used by folks that are up here, just to run their dogs or walk the school grounds or play on the school playground, those sorts of things already. And that north field that's just not really in use for anything could be so well utilized, I believe. So I think it's just huge. And then it just blends into other things like a common spot to post newsletters or that sort of thing. Anyways, that's just my thoughts.
That's a really good point. So you made two really good points. The whole north field of that school, is kind of almost the only flat spot on the bench. Like, we don't
Yeah.
have a lot of flat.
Yeah.
And then the other part too is this common place to post things. And because we're all so spread out, and we don't have a lot of bulletin boards that are community hubs, like it's a challenge. So that's a really good point too. And then also, Bethany, Brittany, sorry, you probably see this, but there's a chat from Tammy just wanting to know how she put her hand up.
Yeah,
But she can probably just go ahead and chat.
Yeah, Tammy, if you want to speak, assuming that Sue is done, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
I can.
You can? Okay, that's good. Yeah, no, I was going to comment too on that north field of the school there. And one thing I was thinking, as the population up here ages, a lot of individuals would probably like to have gardens, but it becomes hard to take care of a garden.
Right.
So I like on Vancouver Hill there, they have a community garden. And I kind of thought that area would be good for a community garden that would involve the kids at the school too, and harvesting and all that, working with people in the area that would like to grow, food and stuff there. I think that works really good. I know people that use that garden up on Vancouver Hill.
Tammy, that's actually something, and I haven't been there for a bit, but I thought they had some gardens behind the school.
They do.
They do.
Oh yeah, but they're nothing like the one on Vancouver Hill. Yeah, they're just, I think that field just doesn't really get used at all. And it would be kind of neat to see the kids out there and lots of things growing, and even some fruit trees or something that's reminiscent of how West Bench kind of used to be, and to teach the kids all about harvesting and and growing stuff like that and taking care of it. And then anybody in the community can help out and take care of that too. It just looks so drab, right? That empty field.
No. I hate it in the summertime because they don't water the grass.
I know, it looks awful, and it could be used. It's a big piece of land that could be used for, even then if you had the commercial kitchen idea, then making food to deliver to the elderly people that are up here, right? And people can sign up and volunteer and stuff like that. So that would be kind of a good way of supporting the neighborhood.
Yeah, for sure. So that conversation is definitely something that's in the works. But yeah, this COVID has just slowed everything down.
Yeah, for sure.
You
And
know
another question, sorry.
No, go ahead, Tammy. Sorry.
Another question I had was, is there, I know we need the sewer system. Is that going to be, or we don't need it, but is that ever going to be a thing so we can have carriage houses or secondary suites or?
So that's like the $1 million question.
Yeah.
And it would definitely have to go. What it would need is, it's so expensive. So what we would need probably to do that is have a developer with some pretty deep pockets to come on board.
Yeah.
But even with that, there's a lot of people in the community that aren't. Like when we did the official community plan review, it was pretty split down the middle of whether people wanted that or not. So I don't see anything immediately happening in that.
Okay. Yeah.
And if it was to happen, it would be with a lot of discussion and a lot of community input.
Yeah. That's a big task for sure.
Yeah.
Especially at this stage. Yeah.
And what I was going to follow up with, just because we've got our recreation staff in the room, I hear this a lot from West Bench about recreation, because we do live close to Penticton, and having access to that kind of, like what I picture as kind of typical city things. But I always hear, not always, but when I do hear from residents about recreation, it's always around this West Bench-esque kind of idea, like vegetable gardening or snowshoeing or history or walking, like that kind of thing. So I just wanted to share that again, because we've got our new staff person in the room, and it's something that I think is really unique that you can't necessarily do in Penticton, but maybe people from Penticton might come up and try growing vegetables.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a good idea, like the snowshoeing, having a group that goes once a week, or having a biking group that goes on the KVR, running groups, stuff like that, everyone, walking group where you can, not walk alone after COVID, actually, but, or you stay apart, but just to, have a group where you can not feel alone. Like a lot of people are by themselves, so they don't want to maybe go out, right? But if there's a group to sign up for in times, then maybe they would. Mhm.
Awesome. Fantastic.
And maybe if I can jump in here just from the recreation side, and Director Gennens, you mentioned it a couple times where COVID has put a wrench in some of the things that we're trying to do or get moving. But at this point in time, it's also forced us even further into thinking a little bit differently about recreation. And so, as an example, we did invest into snowshoes in 2020 as a way to even for community members to borrow them and try them out if they've never tried them. We are looking at some other outdoor type programming. I know in Naramata Centers asked us, is that something we can partner on with our community garden? Because they've got quite a big plot there and they've got the expertise of some individuals that are wanting to teach more. And so we said, yeah, we can absolutely explore that. We piloted a fishing program in 2020. We tried it out in Naramata as well as out in the Similkameen. And so we're starting to get a little more creative. We were hoping to get a biking program going across the region, but unfortunately all the bike instructors said not this year, maybe next year. So fingers crossed for 2021 here that we can have a couple more pilots out and see what the West Bench folks would be interested in engaging in.
Mm-hmm. Even a group that, like a dog walking group that can go up in the trails in the back there. It's a real nice area and people don't even know it's there, but it's nice to go with somebody so people could kind of sign up, bring your dog, on leash or whatever and hike up in the back there. Yeah, just between, West Bench School and Casula there or whatever. Yeah, or Westwood. Yeah, that's a nice area.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, that was one more thing. When you have a dog, there's no garbage cans to put your poop bag. And sometimes you walk for quite a while and you don't always want to carry it the whole way, right? So, and the only one that I know is Selby Park, right? But it would be kind of nice along the KVR and just in a few different, you can carry it for a while for sure, but it'd just be nice to have a few more poop bag stations. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. We've tried putting it in our pocket one time.
I know. It's not good.
No. Even with all the bags.
Yeah, no, yeah. And sometimes somebody leaves one closer to your house, so you pick it up because you're going to be home soon, right? But
well, not everybody does. So thank you for doing that, Tammy.
Yeah, but it'd be nice if, like my husband said, like every bridge, something like that, and just a few more. It wouldn't have to be a lot.
Yeah, I'll put that down for sure. I think that's.
And then what about the bees up on Bonin Park there area? Who has the bees up there?
I don't know.
There's bees up.
More people.
Hey, but that would be kind of cool too. The whole bee thing that's, there's a real problem with enough bees around. And if you really need to get the kids involved and other people involved in that bee and the harvesting of the honey and all that stuff too. That's really neat.
Yeah, do you know, Augusto, is it leased?
I don't know. I just sometimes go up.
In that park.
It's in the Bonin, the park that was.
I was curious if it was leased.
Oh.
They've been there for a long time.
Okay, yeah, they have. Yeah. So I just didn't know if it was part of that park or.
No, it's a private citizen that's put them there apparently.
Okay. It'd be kind of nice though to have something to do with the bees. I don't know, unless people are allergic, I guess, but.
Awesome. Thanks, Tammy.
Sue, I see you have your hand up again.
Well, I was just going to comment on the garbage cans. I agree. It would be nice to have them along the KVR and in some spots, but that's not property that we have tenure on. So I know they put one at the top of West Bench Bridge number 1 there. So that I imagine they did with Ministry of Transportation. I'm not sure, but certainly that's a good idea though. We need to strategically somehow get them out there.
Yeah, like my parents live right along the KVR and they don't use the lower part of their property, and I'm sure they'd allow one to go there. Stuff like that, like just asking people whose properties go down close if they can, we can put one there. I'm sure they would.
You bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay, well, just being cognizant of the time here, it is 8 o'clock. So if there are any final comments?
Hi, it's Miriam. I'm back.
Oh, Miriam, you're back.
Yes, and I could hear a little bit, and my smoke detectors are doing beautifully now.
Good.
And and the presentation was great, and it looks really good. I'm really excited as a senior living over here that we've got such a fabulous community, and that you brought this towards out to us. That was really great.
Well, thanks, Miriam, and thanks for being part of our group and providing so much input. We really valued all the input that you provided on this process. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we're just gonna wrap things up here. Thank you so much, everyone, for all of your comments. Those were all really great ideas that you had, and definitely aligned with some of the comments that we heard already, which is really awesome. It's really clear that the West Bench definitely has like a really strong sense of community, and that's really, really nice to see. So I'm just gonna throw back up this slide again here for you to know. If you haven't had a chance to look at the draft plan yet, please do so. And it's on the Regional Connections page for the RDOS on the Community Recreation page. So if you go to rdosregionalconnections.ca and you click on Community Recreation, then you will be directed to that page. And if you scroll to the bottom, there's a form there where you can provide any comments that you may have on the plan. And so that will close on February 15th. So we appreciate any feedback that you have. And that's it. So thank you so much for participating. And we look forward to reading the rest of your comments.
Thank you, you guys.
Thanks, Brittany.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.